So tonight we're really lucky in the fact that we've got All Black Sevens head coach Clark Laidlaw and the most capped Sevens referee in history, Richard Kelly, to hear and talk through some of their experiences on the International Sevens program. So if we just start with Clark, a born Scotsman, played for Scotland on the Sevens series and was selected for the 2002 Commonwealth Games before he was injured. He managed to play in the 2005 Rugby World Cup for Sevens and then 2006 Commonwealth Games for Scotland. He's obviously had a long association with New Zealand, coaching here from 2008 to 2015, involved with Taranaki, Wellington, with the All Blacks as their skills coach, All Black Sevens with their skills coach, and assistant coach at the Hurricanes. In 2015, he moved back to take up a role with the London Irish before moving back out to New Zealand 2 years later to take up the head role with the All Blacks Sevens. So we've also got Richard Kelly, who obviously a Taranaki local, so these two will know each other from before their time on the Sevens circuit. Kelly has been involved in the national squad of referees since 2009. He debuted on the Sevens series in 2013 at the Gold Coast. He refereed at the 2016 Olympic Games, refereeing a quarterfinal between Japan and France and the semi-final between England and South Africa. And in 2019, he became the most capped Sevens referee when he surpassed his good friend Rasta with 264 games on the Sevens series. Since then, he's clocked up 16 more to be at 280 Sevens series games. 311 games of Sevens total, which involves Rugby World Cups, Coms Games, and Olympic qualifiers. So obviously, guys, we've got some massive intellect for you to ask questions for, and for me to sort of talk to tonight. On your screen, you'll see, and I think some of you, while we were waiting for RK to join, you'll see that you've got a Q&A button. At any time, please put in a question for either of the two. We've got Angus Maybe, who's going to facilitate that and come in at times throughout this presentation to ask your questions of the two guys. Tonight, we're going to cover a little bit of culture that Clark's installed in the AB Sevens, the success and preparation that goes into International Sevens, what the Sevens series is actually like, a little bit on the Olympics, and obviously your questions. So we're going to start with Clark. When I sort of first approached Clark to talk about, or to bring him onto this call, the natural thing that we wanted to talk about, and I've been in a couple of presentations where he has presented on this, is just the culture that he's installed into this group. And he's got some really good resources. So rather than me trying to ask questions about it, I just asked if he would be able to share those resources with us. So I'm going to stop my screen, and Clark's going to share with us those resources and videos.
Cheers, James. Feels a little bit strange. I've been doing Zoom calls every day, and I'm not enjoying it as a rugby coach, I can tell you that much. But yeah, I appreciate the chance to jump on and catch up. And I guess, you know, from our end around the culture piece, you know, in our team, I just lost the 2-6. Makes it better if I can. It's all good. Good test for us, isn't it, around new technology? But yeah, we just. I'll give you a snapshot, I suppose, around our culture, and you know, try and go quickly, I guess, so you can jot down some questions and flick them in. It does feel a wee bit strange not having that interaction from live. So yeah, wee bit on me. So you can see top left, a little scuttler running around. Played rugby, most of us, since we were young fellas. Came to New Zealand in 2008 from a rugby family. That's my old man playing in the middle. You know, look reasonably similar, I guess. So he played here in 1983 with the Lions and got whacked 4-0 in the Test series, but always talked really highly of his time in New Zealand, and I suppose that sort of ignited a wee bit of my fire to end up in New Zealand. Bottom right was Taranaki, had some great years with Richard, his hometown, and Natter on the line, living the dream really in Taranaki. Looking back, man, we had some fun. And then I think the bottom left sums up my playing career. Tried hard but was never quite good enough. So New Zealand scoring in Hong Kong. I'd love to show the video of that. I actually fell over with Joe Rokithoko, turned me inside out, but he was a hell of a sevens player. And then working with Titch and the team back in 2011. And then top right, that's my family, 3 girls, keep me honest. So that's a wee bit about me. A wee bit on our team.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Ooh.
Oh, sorry. Oh, there.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Ooh, mountains, we gon' walk it out, and the silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet. Ooh, mountains, bring it to its feet. Ooh, mountains. That we have each other, and we will rise, we will rise, we'll rise, we'll rise. I'll rise up, rise like the day, I'll rise up in spite of the ache. I will rise 1,000 times again, and we'll rise up. I like the waves, we'll rise up in spite of the ache. We'll rise up, and we'll do it 1,000 times again.
So I might just exit that so I can see. Yeah, when we first started, 2007 September was when the players came in. We started in July 2017, and I guess real quick I realised the team never really had a vision of why they were there or who they were. So it was probably reasonably scary how little we actually had in place as a as a national team and a professional rugby team. So it was good because we had a real opportunity to create our own culture, create our own habits, create how we done stuff, get really clear on why we were here. And it's pretty straightforward when you work with All Black Sevens team. We're expected to win tournaments and try and win pinnacle events. So the why is reasonably straightforward. But I guess if the Olympics go ahead at some point, I don't get an Olympic medal. Neither does any of the staff or the players that don't play. We didn't get a Commonwealth Games. That was obviously the build-up to the Commonwealth Games final. So it has to be a wee bit more than that for us. And this is what we came up with. So people are inspired by what they hear, see and feel. So really, I want people to be inspired all the time, every time we interact with people. So whether that's the way we play, the way we operate on and off the field. And the hear, see and feel was a wee bit around when people hear around what we're up to. Hopefully through James or Richard, you hear that we're a good crew and we're doing things well. You might want to come and see it, or you might want to see us play because you've heard the way we're trying to play the game. And as everybody in the call will realise, that feel is, I guess, the unmeasurable stuff that any good business or sports team has behind the scenes, that you can get there and you can feel it. And when I watch that video, you can hear the music. It's a pretty powerful song. You can see some vision. But the biggest thing that comes back to me was the feel in the dressing room, and Timmy was speaking and everybody was crying. You can't really see that in the vision. So really that's our vision. As I say, I'll go through it reasonably quick so then we can ask questions.
Our culture and our team, or our makeup of our team, is quite a diverse bunch. There's 7 guys across a field and you're expected to trust the guy next to you. If they haven't bought into what they've grown up with, then it's really hard to ask that of each other.
As a team, as well as a country, we're quite multicultural. When we all understand each other's cultures, we're all heading in the right direction and then achieving that one goal.
I think my job's to unite and inspire a number of different cultures and backgrounds that are within our team, get us all on the same page and and going forward in the same direction.
You probably see our group at the moment a pretty happy bunch, and have been for a while. And I think a lot of it is due to we enjoy each other for what we are. There's different cultures, but you just accept that, and I think it actually grows you as a group because you look at things differently. As we build that as a group, I think it's massive to sort of replicate on the field.
We get to kind of embrace all our cultures into one. Then we can understand each other more, especially coming from different cultures, different backgrounds. We're definitely going out there to win.
I suppose this is pretty cool that we are able to bring everyone together and incorporate where everyone's come from and put that into our team. I think that showed in Dubai. We got down to 9 players, I think, and we still managed to grind away, and we managed to actually win that tournament. So I think that's sort of where culture and I think the trust in your brothers, that that they've got your back, I think that's where that comes into play.
The game is over. New Zealand, they are champions again in Dubai. This gutsy New Zealand team have done it.
It's easy to focus on catch, pass and tackle, but ultimately that'll always get better if we do our jobs right. The culture's key. It underpins everything we do and how we operate, and I always think that needs to come first, and then the rugby can follow. That was a little piece that World Rugby put together for us, and I thought it summed up how the players took that vision on. So out of the vision, the players really developed commitment statement that they drive, and some of the traditions and rituals are around this. So, you know, the short version would be we work beneath the black. So everything you do before you get to wear the T-shirt as a coach or put the jersey on as a player is to make sure you're as ready as you can possibly be. So you can stand amongst the black, which is obviously when we play, you know, and we had some really good chats when we first started around what that needed to look like, and how we'd maybe lost our way a little bit as a team around representing the team for different reasons. And I guess one day you finish, you know, so if we don't win, I'll get the sack and I'll finish. If the players choose to leave or get injured or not selected, then they'll leave. So really it's the two parts. So when you leave the team, you can really leave with your head held high, and I guess you've left the team in a better spot. And really the behaviours at the bottom around humility, effort and positive, I'll touch on them just in a wee bit. And then out of that, as I say, I'm going reasonably quick, but we really developed what we thought was a point of difference. Like a lot of New Zealand rugby teams around our Pacifica players, or European and our Maori, and we built the team off our vision and our commitment statement, and then really used I guess real stories and themes around the Pacifica players. We sing in all the different languages. We're attack with Tamasi coaches is in, you know, a lot of Pacifica language. Our coach for defence, obviously not Maori, but as I say to a lot of people, the Scots and the Maoris are reasonably similar. We reasonably, you know, like to drink and have a good time, and we're not shy of fighting each other. And then when other people get here, you fight them. So reasonably similar, I guess, through history. And obviously the European, so our language for set piece, Liam Barry coaches that, kickoffs, set pieces in English. So we really try and use that as a real strength and tie all the players in, and get real good buy-in from them around driving that commitment statement based off that. How the behaviour should look, and we've spent a bit more time on this again this year. You know, you can read that as grateful for what we have, respecting the team around our actions and language. Effort, we've managed to come up with some stats now too that we can actually measure effort on field. So effort's being prepared and being consistent, and a big thing that came through from the players was really comparing themselves with themselves first. You know, before you can lead and you can drive standards, you've got to make sure your own house is in order, and that's the same for the staff. And again, positive, I often joke that positive's there for me because I'm Scottish and we're a reasonably negative race and love a moan. So, you know, that's good for me to keep a good energy. And I think it was somebody like Dylan Collier talking about maturity on your bad days. So you don't always, you know, you're not always loving life. I guess this last 4-6 weeks is really testing a lot of people, but that's maturity in your bad days. It's still finding a way to stay upbeat and stay positive. And then a snapshot on really how we drive that within our group. You know, there's a lot of work and different stuff behind this, but the overall framework for a week or a month or a day or a meeting is based off this. You know, we just call it the performance triangle. Anybody that's seen David Galbraith present, he's obviously heavily involved with us around the leadership and our culture. So we try and have a lot of fun, be connected as a group. You know, we all learn our haka and we all sing. We have many teams. We have a whole lot of fun every day if we can, and make that a real focus in our weeks. Then our edge and growth is you know, we need to get better some days, or if things are not quite as good as what we want, we need to make sure there's an edge to our work. Having fun and connection doesn't mean to say it's fluffy and it's always nice, because it's not. And growth is, you know, straightforward around trying to be better. And then the focused performance is just doing the business. But you could see that in our environment real quick. It should, you know, we could sing at the start of a meeting. There could be some edge and growth around some video, or, you know, meetings or questioning. We do a lot of, you know, spot questioning now around the growth and making sure there's edge, that people are taking on the information. And then we go outside and train. So really, you should be able to see that if anybody comes into the environment, which part of that triangle the group should be operating in. And it gives us a real good framework for our players to then deliver on our expectations for the week and what they should look like, you know, at any given time. So the fun and connection is reasonably easy for New Zealand rugby players and sevens players. So the bottom two are a bit more of a, I guess, an education and a slower growth. Now that's How do I stop sharing? That's a snapshot of, you know, what we've went through. I guess what I would add to that, you know, the first year was really about centralisation and making sure we did get a culture and a vision strong. Made sure, you know, we got the staff, and then tried to win the Commonwealth Games and World Cup. The second year was really about trying stuff and, you know, ultimately qualify for the Olympics. But we felt that year was a real good year for us to really stretch ourselves around the game and see which parts we thought were really strong or really needed developed. And then this year, we were really striving for that consistency and a peak performance, you know, so we tailored our whole year to peak at the first two events, to peak at Hong Kong, and then obviously peak at the Olympics, and really grow the sort of player ownership this year. It was, and really try and grow that maturity. We didn't know that 2-3 years ago, but as we went, we really realised that the players needed to take more of a lead. So it's been quite good, that 3-year process, to not only with our culture but our on-field performance. You know, we're really happy with how we're playing, and that sort of connection as a group now, and the maturity they're starting to show on and off the field. We don't always get it right on the field or off the field, as any rugby teams, but we're certainly starting to see a real consistency now through our culture into a performance, which is, you know, really exciting. And like everybody feel like the rug's been pulled for us, I guess, around this COVID-19, but we just need to adapt. I'm sure we can talk about that as we go through tonight.
Clark, thanks very much, mate. That's awesome, and awesome information and insight into what you've tried to achieve. A couple of really good things that stood out for me is you talk about you wanting to inspire people and wanting to inspire New Zealand. And I know that Richard and I have spoken on many occasions, but the time that we're most inspired by what you guys are doing is when you're playing the likes of Fiji and South Africa, and it's games that Richard and I can never actually be involved in to referee. But mate, we watch the effort and the quality of those games, and they're some of the best games of sevens that are out there. So for you, and you know, Richard and I are privileged enough that we can see some of the best games and be involved in some of those games. But to see the level that you bring to those games is very inspirational. The other thing I took out of that was you got the players talking about how important their culture is, or their team culture is, and they talk about having multiple cultures within that group, which you've talked about too. But the most important thing is that single team culture. And I just wanted to follow up on a question we saw in the first video before the players were running out for a warm up in a huddle singing. And I know that they sing in all 3 different languages, or which you've talked about already with the Maori, Pacifica and European. How important is singing to your group, and sort of what started that?
Well, what started it was an idea from David Galbraith around connection. The theme around the Pacifica and Maori and European actually came from a documentary that British Sky put together for the Lions series called Beneath the Black. So the very first meeting we had, we went to Raglan for 3 days, and we all watched the documentary. And so out of that sort of came, there's actually research around singing and learning and what it does to your brain. But it was more initially around connecting as a group. And then DG had the idea around, because when you sing, if you think about it, when you sing, you can't think about anything else because you're just singing. And we want to play like that. We want to play like we're not thinking. We want to play like we're just letting go. And you're right, those big games against Africa and Fiji, you can't think, and you just got to play on instinct. So it kind of ties. There's a bit of depth to it around how it ties all that together. So the idea, the very first time we sang was we played Samoa in Dubai, 9:20 in the morning, and we were sharing a dressing room in Wales. And me, Timmy, and Skaz, because we only had 2 leaders at that stage. Now you can see there's not too many Maori or Pacifica in those 3. And we nearly bottled it. We were like, oh, I'm not sure about this singing before the game. And Timmy, he was like, I'll do anything to try and win. Fuck it, let's just do it. And it was unreal when we sang, and the feeling straight after singing, how connected they felt and how relaxed. And you know, sort of in the zone, I guess people would say, but you could just feel it. And then we've done it ever since. And some of the Maori boys have really, especially this year, Joey Webber and Regan and Nahori Magabi Black have really taken it on. And, you know, we try and learn a new song every so often. And it's kind of grown arms and legs a little bit. We used to just sing a little bit. But now we, you know, in most Kiwi rugby, you know, sitting on a bus with a couple of beers and a guitar, there's nothing better, is there? So, you know, we really enjoy it, and it's become a big part of connecting the group.
Awesome. We'll pass over to Gus if there's some questions from our listeners.
Thanks, James. Just a reminder, guys, if you do have any questions, just pop them in the Q&A or in the chat, and we'll try and get to them when we can. A question's come through, Clark, and it relates to the cultural aspect of it. And obviously there were some challenges that you faced when you first walked in. How much of a challenge was it to convince the players that A, there was an issue of some sort, something was broken, and B, centralising the program?
Well, I think, you know, people used to say to me, oh man, it must be, you know, it's been sort of intimidated or nervous around going into a team after just coached the team for 20 odd years. And, you know, in some aspects of that was true. You know, the team had been hugely successful for a long time, but in the sort of short to medium term before me, obviously the team had really struggled. You know, we hadn't been successful at the Olympics, but I think there was a bigger, deeper sort of rooted problem within the team around the culture. So the players especially were really receptive to something new. The reason we went to Raglan was, well, how do we make it completely different to what they've done before? So we went to Raglan, had an amazing race to get there. We drank beer, we had a feed, we went paintballing, we did no rugby, we went surfing. And the boys were a bit like, wow, this is weird, this is a bit different. So it was easy for us to switch it up because it had been the same for so long. So you know, that was a major strength of the program for a while. But then, you know, as all things, sometimes you change up. So I think from that angle, it was, you know, reasonably easy. And we've got an amazing group of senior players that have a massive appetite to be better and wanted to be better. So I used Timmy a lot as an example. But when I went around and met all the players individually that were contracted, and he had a sheet of paper with his own growth plan on it. And at the top, he had a new era, how good can I be? And that kind of summed up, not the attitude of all the players, because there were some players that, you know, we needed to move on because they didn't quite have that same attitude. But Timmy and Scuzz really set the benchmark for us around making change. And then it was really the same on centralisation, that the major countries around the world were all centralised. You know, Africa's had an academy for 10 years, they've been centralised for 10. You know, Fiji train together every day. So, you know, I think it was both the men's and women's team that always had to happen. We play 10 tournaments in the men's series around the world. There's 3 weeks between tournaments. If you don't centralise, you're only at home for a week. You're back in camp. It would have been impossible, you know, in the sort of current season as it is now, leading towards the next Olympics. So, you know, it's and we're lucky. You know, we're in the Mount. We get great weather for training. You know, we've got a good enough facility to house us and so on. So it's really conducive to the team really enjoying themselves at training every day.
Keep those questions coming through, guys. Unmute your mic, James.
It's a good question.
Unmute your mic, James.
Thank you. Right, we'll move forward, Mr. Kelly.
Kia ora, everyone. Hope everyone is well.
So, Richard, obviously an early photo of you, and I've sort of titled this little segment, The Journey. You've been around a long time, you're very experienced, but you're still operating at a level of an exceptionally high performance level. So I just thought we'd talk about your first experience of sevens, debuting on the Gold Coast in 2013. and sort of what led up to that debut, and you know, were you always, was Sevens always on your radar, or was it something that sort of came up as an opportunity? So what led up to that, and what lessons did you take from your first tournament?
Yeah, thanks, James. I don't know where you get these photos from, but geez, I wish I had a flash
Had to hunt for it,
like Clark did. Yeah, hey, I suppose the journey, as you've called it, started in 2009 for myself when I first joined the national squad. I was lucky enough to be refereeing Mitre 10 by 2010, I think, and then in 2013, I wasn't that well travelled, so to speak. Like, I'd never actually had a lot of life experiences outside of New Zealand. I'd brought a house, I was actually married, but I'd never actually ventured or done an OE or anything. So I did something drastic. I went to Georgia, Tbilisi, for 3 to 4 months and worked closely with Milton Haig over there as the head coach of Georgia at the time, and refereed in their club competition and helped develop their referees over there. So sort of coming back from that, I think I got a call from Bryce Lawrence, and I think he had just sort of joined the management team back then, and he gave me a call and said, you know, we're thinking about putting your name forward to join the 7 Series, and go away and have a think about it. So I think I hung up, and about 30 seconds later I rang him up and said, yeah, bloody oath, of course I want to be a part of this. The opportunity to go to, obviously, the Olympics was a massive carrot, so I certainly wanted to go forward and do that. Yeah, and I was lucky enough to be nominated by New Zealand and then selected by World Rugby. And my first tournament was, yeah, in 2013 on the Gold Coast.
Awesome. And how did that tournament go for you? What sort of was it deer in headlights moments? Did you feel prepared for it?
You obviously prepare as well as you can. I wasn't really Sevens focused leading into that. I didn't think of that as a direction that I was going to go down that path when I first started refereeing. But then obviously being nominated, then I started getting Sevens hungry. And then once you're in there refereeing international players, that's where you want to be. You want to be in those environments all the time. You sort of see by Clark's presentation of the importance it is for these guys and how much work goes in. So there's nothing better than running around in international rugby. So yeah, so just flowed on from there, really.
Awesome. And you obviously in 2013 you joined a pretty established group of Sevens referees on a 4-year journey to 2016. So a year later, the Commonwealth Games comes along, and you miss out on selection. So what was that like, and what sort of learnings, and what was your focus going on from that disappointment?
Yeah, you're right. There was an established group when I first joined the 7 Series. I wasn't lucky enough to sort of join as one big group where like 6 or 8 referees join all together. I was a bit of a lone sheep, really, to begin with, chucked in with a whole lot of guys that were quite experienced at the time. I actually remember missing out on the Com Games in 2014 quite vividly. I don't know if you remember this, Angus, but you received a press conference or a media thing, obviously through Radio Sport, and then you sat there and asked if I knew who'd been selected for the Com Games. And then I said, no. So I forced you to read out the list, and then obviously my name wasn't on there. So I said, okay, thanks boys, breakfast is over and I'm going up to my room. So just to have a little bit of salt. But out of that, I knew then that what came out of that, moving forward, if I'm going to make it to Olympics in Rio, which was the ultimate goal at that time, then I need to undo a few things that I'd sort of been doing, work really hard at my game, so stripped everything back and just really brought that focus and that belief that you got to really find inside you, because it is disappointing when you don't get selected for things, and it happens. If you're going to be a high performance in any sport, like any player or any referee, there are times that you're going to miss selection, but it's how you come back from that that's really important.
Awesome. Yeah, I do. I know the feeling of missing out on comms games all too well, Kelly, and World Cups for that matter. So understand the hurt that you went through. So what was your turning point around that? And you're obviously, when I joined you on the Sevens circuit, you know, you'd obviously been to an Olympic Games, which we'll touch on in a bit. But you were really the sort of go-to man for some tough games, and you know, like I think it's some tough games like a France-Argentina, where there's going to be some tough refereeing to do. It was always Richard Kelly that was down next to that appointment. So what was the sort of turning point where you understood that you really understood what your game was about, and what did you have to do to achieve that?
Yeah, I mean, I was brought Rod Hill on board. Like, he started coaching me, and if anyone knows Rod, he's really good. He was a really good man. Could be very painful to work with at the same time, those that know him really well. And why I say painful is he wouldn't give you any answers. He'd make you work it out yourself. So it would take, you know, 6, sometimes 12 months to come up with an answer, and you just felt like, Rod, just tell me the answer. But through that process, I had to undo a lot of what I was doing if I was to make it work on the international stage. So that was quite tough to let go of a lot of stuff that I'd created in refereeing, first and foremost. So once I'd sort of started doing that and unraveling everything, it was then about building everything back up again. And I suppose the one big thing that I sort of did that made the ultimate difference is just the way I started reviewing my games. I sort of designed with Rod a template about looking at every single decision that I made, or every single breakdown, and then measuring those. So we would look, and if there's a tackle and it was 100% right, 100% all the players would do everything correct, and I didn't have to make a decision, then that would just be a tick. If there's a decision that I made that I got 100% right, then that was a tick. If there's a decision that I made that was wrong, you know, that was a cross. If there's a decision that I didn't make, then that was also a cross. And then over a period of time, I was able to measure that. So what that sort of did was it allowed me to not only really review myself really deeply around my decision making, but it also allowed me to analyze the players and the game really well. So I got to learn like different techniques and strategies that different teams would actually use. And before I knew it, I was actually running around out there, knowing almost what was going to happen before it unfolded, if that sort of makes sense. Not saying that I'd get everything right, but it just allowed me those pictures to be seen before they unfolded. Yeah, and so then from that, just a lot more natural flow started happening. And then I really tried to minimize the amount of errors that I was making, and my accuracy in my decision making, like shorten those from, say, 4 to 5 non-decisions or errors in a game down to like that 1 or 2. And that started really making a real difference in a buy-in with all the coaches and players, because my games started becoming more accurate.
Awesome. And I'd say, just to add to your thought process along there, mate, when I first came onto the series, you had such decisiveness around your pictures. So you'd have multiple, probably, you know, 5 or 6 guys every day coming up to you and asking you what your views were on a specific clip. And it was just because you had such clarity in your head, you take one look at the clip and go, yeah, no, you got to nail that, or no, play on for me. And look, it really forced home the point, the need to review and have clarity in what your game was about. Because if you looked at some other boys when we were first started, when we were reviewing our clips, we'd be looking at it going like, oh, I don't know, I can see what you're talking about. And then we bring it to you and, nah, 100% boys, this is what it is. And that really helps, like this current group that we've got, develop some real ability in our self-review, and therefore our performance on the field. So, mate, like the work that you put in all those years ago, I still know that you're doing it now, because I know that you're sitting in the changing room and your review takes longer than the actual game took. So,
yeah. Well, it's about, you know, doing that. It's also about being vulnerable. So we as referees sometimes quite often justify why we made that decision or how we go about making that decision. So when you're doing this sort of process, you can actually remove yourself away from that game and just be really totally honest with yourself. Like, it's only you that's reviewing it. It's only you that's going to see this data. And then you get the real cold, hard facts around that and from behind the game. And just for those out there that are like, do 15s, for example, there's no reason you can't design or do something. I know Chris Pollock does something in this space around like reviewing scrums, or, you know, reviewing every line out and the accuracy around how that's set up, line out to maul. You know, so when you go to games and you know the pitches and they just come to the forefront of your mind all the time.
Absolutely. Angus,
I think, sorry, James, like from a coach's perspective, that clarity and, you know, our ability to build relationships with referees on the World Series is obviously high because we travel together and so on. But, you know, I totally agree from a coach's point of view, if a referee can be, you know, really clear with the obvious pictures and get them right. Sevens happen so fast that the reality is both players, coaches and referees, or all three, you know, are going to make bad decisions or wrong decisions. But I think, you know, that's why you two boys do reasonably well in the World Series, or better than reasonably well. You do, you know, bloody well. It's because you're clear and accurate with most of your pictures, and that's what the players and coaches are looking for. It's no different for us, you know.
Clark, does that frustrate you in the sense that you listen to what RK and James talk about and where they arguably sit on the World Sevens circuit as referees, but the fact that, and James touched on it earlier, they aren't eligible to referee New Zealand games. Does that sit comfortably with you?
Oh, it's definitely frustrating. I spoke to Richard the other day, you know, without James and Richard on the circuit, and then Jordan Wade didn't travel to the last two tournaments, so you know, three probably top 5 or 6 referees were not even there. You know, and ultimately, if James and Richard are, if we argue they're in the top 3 or the top 2, then, you know, at best we're getting 3, 4, 5 ranked referees for the big games. But, you know, it is what it is, I guess. It's great to see, you know, because the New Zealand referees have got a really good relationship with the coaches and good respect from the coaches, you know, so that's credit to the work that everybody's doing in New Zealand around the referees program and producing 2 boys that can do bloody well. I still think they should be allowed to referee. I think Richard has different opinions around refereeing New Zealand versus Fiji, and he makes a big call for us to leave. He thinks he might get eaten alive at the hotel. But
so you would welcome that if it was up to you?
I would welcome. Yeah, I would welcome it. Yeah. You know, I think that study showed not long ago, as long as it's not South Africa and South Africa, you're probably all right. So.
Perfect. Angus, is there any questions for Richard at this stage on his journey?
How do you keep your guns as big now as they were 10 years ago in that photo?
I don't know. Who's asked that? You got to throw them under the bus.
Anonymous.
Oh, of course it is. No, the way I'll answer that is the level of fitness in refereeing has definitely gotten way higher. I mean, the first group that I was involved in, they'd made a big change, actually. They changed a lot of the sort of drinking culture that referees sort of had. Like the old days, they used to just turn up first day, they'd just be straight on the gas, basically. So they got rid of all that. Then we introduced all the fitness side of things. And then once that group's moved forward, this next actual group that's come through, it's just gone a whole nother level again. And we do occasionally get guys come along to our trainings, like referees, and they jump into our sessions. And they pretty quickly get spat out the back. And some of these might just be our recovery day sessions. So it is really physically demanding.
Yeah, I'll just second that what you're saying there, RK. I mean, we've got a guy currently who's our sort of fittest referee. He just put in a 4:11 Bronco, 4 minutes 11 Bronco. You know, he's 67 kgs, but I mean, it's still impressive timing wise. So the fitness standards are certainly increased with the need, really. The players are incredibly fit, so we've got to match it so that we can make good decisions.
Just a follow-up question from the floor, just quickly. This is directed at Richard. How has your Sevens circuit, or how has the Sevens circuit rather, prepared you for some of the successes you've had in the 15s code?
Yeah. Well, what Sevens does is it exposes you to all sorts of different environments. You got to be hugely adaptable in the game of Sevens, because anything can get thrown on you in any sort of day. When you run out in front of 50,000 screaming Africans, you know, that puts the little hairs on the back of your neck stand up pretty straight. And when you're refereeing the home team like that, you know, they let you know every single decision, rightly or wrongly, whether it's right or wrong. You know, they either love you or they absolutely hate you. They want to jump over the fence and look like they want to sort of kill you. So that puts a lot of, I suppose, stripes on your back. And then you can just I bring a lot of that back into the 15s game and the experiences that we can get in and around Mitre 10 Cup. And I suppose, to use an example, a lot of the guys that we have refereed, like James, they've used the Sevens platform to actually go and form really good careers in the 15s game. So you see a lot of guys in Super Rugby. A lot of my friends actually refereed at the World Cup as well. Guys like Luke Pearce and Alex Larousse from France, Federico Salmi from Argentina. A lot of those guys have gone on. There's Marius van der Westhuizen, Rusta Rusavinga. You know, they've all gone on and refereed test matches in quite a high number of Super Rugby games. So it is a real good platform for anyone that aspires to be a Sevens referee and is young enough to sort of get that behind them before they can jump forward into something like a 15s career.
Perfect. Clark, mate, we'll just shift gears towards some sort of preparing for success. And if I can just ask or point out a question, really. So in the 2017-18 season, you're a head coach coming into a team that over the past 2 seasons hadn't really, as you've alluded to already, hadn't really lived up to expectations. I mean, the Olympic Games in 2016 was obviously not a success for the team. On the 2016-17 World Series, the team finished 4th, and they failed to reach a final that year. But since you've been at the helm, the team has finished 3rd in 2018, winning the Cape Town leg of the series, winning both the Commonwealth Games gold and the Sevens World Cup. And in 2019, the team finished 3rd, reaching 3 finals, winning 2 of them, Dubai and Sydney. And obviously this year, following the first 6 tournaments before obviously play stopped, the team had only lost 3 games, reached 4 finals, winning 3 of them, and they currently lead the series. So obviously the success has sort of been building, and what is a huge year for Sevens, or was a huge year for Sevens, with it being Olympic year. So the team was building nicely. But mate, what would you say if you know, I don't want to put a number on it, but you know, some key points in that process that has allowed this team to build towards that pinnacle?
Yeah, I suppose those numbers almost sum it up, really. That when we started, as I said, we realised pretty quickly there was a lot of work to be done, and we knew we couldn't win everything that year because there was so much work to be done off the field and centralise and so on. So we tried to win early to give us confidence. You know, and one of the players I remember after winning Cape Town, that was our 2nd tournament. We lost the final the first week to Africa, and then we won the 2nd week. And looking back now, I'm not really sure how we managed to do that because we had nothing in our game. We just had a real enthusiasm for our culture and how we were trying to build that. And one of the players gave me his medal after the tournament. He said, "There'll be plenty more of those this year." And we never won another World Series tournament that year. But you know, we definitely tried to just win the World Cup and the Com Games. We put all our eggs in those baskets around the preparation, you know, around the physical and rugby, and really tried to peak or play our very best. And then I guess the consistency we found this year is a product of us, really spending time looking at our game from our systems and structures to our skill sets, looking at the mindset, both sides of the ball. We had a great off-season this year. We had more players. When we first started 2 years ago, we only actually had 5 players. So the year we won the Commonwealth Games, we had 5 players in the mount, and 3 players drove over from Hamilton every day. So we had 8 players to train for the first 2 months. Everybody was like, "Oh, you've centralised." But yeah, we've centralised with 5 players. So the off-season this year, we had, I think we had 12 or 14 to start this pre-season. And that allowed us to really look at our game, and the players look at our game and rebuild our game. We started right back at the start with our skill sets, then we looked at our systems and structures, and then built our mindset on the back of that. We done things like we sent our game out to, I had this great quote the other day, they called them naive experts. So we sent them to Ozzie McLean, Tom Coventry, and Jeff Wilson. So 3 great rugby minds, but not necessarily experts in sevens. So they gave us huge feedback on what they seen in our game. And it was good because there was some stuff in there that, you get a little bit sevens conditioned to what you see, and you forget some of the principles that are in 15s that can still really work because it's still a game of rugby, a bit like refereeing, I guess. So that pre-season, I think, really allowed us to build on the 2 previous years. We'd obviously learnt a bit around our own game and opposition and how we train and how we travel and all that. So, I think 3 years or into our 3rd season, we are really happy with that consistency. We also made a final in Paris at the back end of the year. So that's kind of how I would see it. There's been a shitload of work obviously went into the 2.5 years. We've recruited and developed really well. I think the group of players we've now got are really geared up for playing well. You look at Narohi McGarvey-Black this year, how he's, we've had to show some real patience with Nige around developing him. It's not been a straightforward line, like you, Richard, around, you have to take a few setbacks. He came into the team and ripped up straight away and then went backwards a wee bit after that. But, he's starting to show that real consistency in his game, and he's probably a reflection on that. And the Super Rugby players coming in, the 3 boys that have been in with Etienne and Celesi and Caleb have really added, another dimension to the group, and a few more numbers. We've actually had a few boys to train.
Does that create tension, Clark, in terms of when you, especially with an Olympic year and there's the opportunity is given to some of those more 15 specialists to join the group? Does that create tension amongst the current guys, and how do you manage that?
Oh, the short answer would be no. From what I've seen, you never know what's happening in a changing room. But because of culture and our identity is really strong, and what everybody forgets is those 3 players we've had first. So Celesi came to us. He was in no squad, no academy. Caleb was a little bit different, but he also got picked in the Commonwealth Games team. But he had to get an operation. He got appendicitis a few days before the tournament. And Etienne obviously came to us straight from school. And Scott Gregory was also going to join us, 3 weeks ago before it went into lockdown. So I think our vision around identifying some of the best young talent to come here and transition into 15s is really serving us well with those players, because it wasn't, dropping in. People would say, "Oh well, dropping in a Damien McKenzie or an Adi Xavier." I get that, they're outstanding rugby players. But the transition of these boys coming back, they knew us, we know them, the players know them, they know how we roll. So it was really, a really positive, and that was really 2-3 years ago, we really identified as that, and we've got another group of young players with us at the minute that we would see playing in the next Olympics. Jacob Nepkins is an example from Taranaki. We think will go on and become a chief. But he's the type of player, Kitione Vai, Lani Nanai's brother, he's joined us, he's only 18, an outstanding young loose forward that we would see transition into the Blues, in the next couple of years. But hopefully then when we ask them or ask if they want to come back, they're knocking on our door. So I think that's mitigated the tension.
If someone like and I'll just create a hypothetical, someone like a Bowden Barrett knocked on your door or gave you a text or a phone call and said, "Mate, I want to go to the Olympics this year," how seriously would you consider picking someone like a Bowden Barrett for just that, for an Olympic cycle?
Seriously, yeah, we would. we would look at any player if they wanted to commit to what we set out as what we felt they had to commit to, which was as early as possible. There was a cut-off date for Scott Gregory, which was 3 weeks before Hong Kong. That was the last point we felt we could bring a player in and really make it successful. So, you know, if it was Bodie or any other player that wanted to be part of it, if they said they wanted to come in and for the 3 weeks leading up to the Olympics, the answer would be no. You know, and people can argue that point, which I'm comfortable with, because when the Olympics finishes, we will either win or we'll lose. And everybody on the call know, and Richard and James can tell you how fine those lines are going to be. So we could have Bodie, Ardy, Damien McCann, we could have them all in the team coming in 3 weeks ago, and everybody, oh, it's a rock star team, but we could still lose. And then what do you do with the group that you've developed for 3 years? What do you do with the man you went to war with every day, the day after the Olympics? You know, because the sun will come up. We want to win, but if I go back to our identity is not about winning the Olympics. Our identity is about inspiring people, you know, and it's ironic that this COVID-19, I think, put us in a great spot for coping with it, because our identity is so strong around how we want to operate as a group, and we're not caught up in just winning the Olympics. Because if you were, I think you'd go off the rails at the minute. You know, I'm already drinking enough Heineken with 3 kids in the house every day. But I'm not overly stressed around the Olympics not happening this year. I'm massively disappointed because I thought we had the team really humming. But that's not going to define us as a group. You know, it's not going to define when I live and breathe All Black and leave the team. Some people will think winning the Olympics will define me, but it won't. It won't define me as a man. It won't define me as a dad or a rugby coach. So, you know, I'm really excited around what we've developed with the team. You know, and I'm really comfortable that we've got our selections right. I guess we now need to ask them to stay for another year. That's the next job, I guess.
Fantastic input, fantastic questions. Richard Kelly, I want to follow on from preparing for success, mate, and a little phrase that you taught me, or you say quite a bit when you're leading into a big game or getting yourself amped up, is big game blue. And mate, for me, like it's obviously a little bit tongue in cheek with when you're saying it, but it's more around not wearing the orange kit. But basically, big game blue for you would be a mental skills trick. Am I correct in saying that to get yourself prepared for a game, you're talking yourself and making sure that you're ready for what the occasion is coming up?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's just a little bit of a metaphor that I used. There's a bit of a joke in the changing room with a few of the boys. But yeah, I used to save my blue jersey pretty much all day and didn't wear it if I didn't have to. And I suppose it's just a little bit of mindset. When I knew I was putting on the blue jersey, a little bit like what Clark touched on before, like beneath the black. It's the same sort of analogy, really. That I knew that if I put this jersey on, it's going to be a big game. I'm more than likely to be refereeing Fiji, South Africa, Fiji, Aussie, you know, South Africa, Aussie, big game. It'll be a semi-final, final. So it's just a little bit, like I said, like a mindset, just running out onto the field. So it became a little bit of a joke, really.
No, awesome. But that joke sort of, well, it led you from being not selected from the Commonwealth Games to, in the 2 years after that, performing at such a high level that come Olympics in 2016, you were appointed to the quarterfinal between Japan and France, which finished 14-7 with Japan scoring in overtime to go through. And you refereed that so well that the following appointment was the semi-final between England and South Africa, which finished 7-5. So 2 massive games on the back of not being selected for a pinnacle tournament to the biggest tournament in our game, to performing at such a high level that you get those appointments, mate. So I guess I just wanted to hear your thoughts on what actually got you there and what changed for you leading into that tournament and allowing you to sort of achieve that performance under that sort of pressure.
Yeah, I suppose I've touched on it a little bit before around what I sort of did with the pitches. I suppose I also had a little saying that I sort of had in my mind all the time, which my opinion is the one that matters, leading into those big events like that. And that sort of enabled me to focus on myself and not get too distracted from outside influences. And then it enabled me to just execute the game plan that was in place. Because we do a lot of work around preparation leading into tournaments, just like teams do, like trying to understand the environment as best we can. I suppose one thing, a little bit of a learning out of the Olympic experience, that I didn't really take into account, was just the effect that it actually had on players and people. So we saw teams like Japan, who weren't even on the World Series at that stage, tipping over New Zealand. They then went into that quarter-final against France. And anyone would think, France would just have to turn up and beat them, which completely went the opposite way. And just so that created a whole different game. So we run around on the World Series, they play with all these structures, they score tries in the corner by spinning it wide and going side to side and all this sort of stuff. But then I found myself at the Olympics with teams actually tucking the ball, not passing, too scared to execute, I suppose, their game plans. And so that created quite a difference in games because they were really intense. So all of a sudden I had a whole lot of breakdowns that I wasn't seeing in tournaments that would lead into. And they would quite often get quite messy just because every player was 100% committed. So there were quite a few bodies just like flying in there. And then as a referee, you had to sort of unravel all that and then make the best decision that sort of suited the game and around all that sort of stuff. So that sort of saying and mindset that I took into the Olympics, I suppose, put me in a good enough stead to be able to referee those high-end games. I was lucky enough to actually get 4 games at the Olympics where some referees would only go and do one. And their one game could have been, a Fiji versus a Brazil. So a bit of a big mismatch game. So I was really fortunate to be able to do that. But a lot of that was because of the planning and stuff leading into these tournaments and the work that we'd done.
Awesome. Angus, I see a few questions coming through.
Yeah, mate. There's heaps of questions coming through, which is great. We'll rip through them. James and RK, Olympics or Rugby World Cup?
Oh, great question.
Don't all answer at once.
What did you say?
Olympics or Rugby World Cup? If you had to choose one to go to, which one would you go to?
The Olympics is next year, isn't it?
At this stage.
So they reckon.
So hopefully the Olympics first, and then we can readjust.
Okay.
Oh, mate, it's always been the Olympics for me since I've got on the sevens program. I've been hungry for that. I mean, Clark's sort of gone down the 15s road as well, and he finds himself back as head coach as New Zealand sevens. So, like, Olympics is a massive carrot for us that are involved in the sevens side of the game.
And Clark, we obviously see so many naturally talented and gifted athletes on the Sevens circuit and in the professional, well, just in the professional game in general. Who would be the most talented player in your team first, but then also that you've ever seen in your time involved in rugby?
Well, that's a massive question. Wow. I think in the team right now it would be Vilamoni Koroi, would be our most gifted rugby player. He's got an unbelievable ability to see the game and a skill set. He's got blistering speed that people don't realise how quick he is. He runs like a 37 on a GPS k an hour. He's a hugely gifted rugby player. And when he's fit and on fire, and he's got his head in the game, he can be unplayable. I still think we've not seen the best out of him on a sevens field. I think you were starting to see that again this year. How well he was going. Best player ever. The best player I ever played against was William Ryder. He was unplayable for 2 seasons. He was ridiculous. He destroyed me in Hong Kong, running towards the south stand. I was sweeping and came across and sort of thought I needed to go pretty quickly to get him. So he whacked me off his left foot and scored under the posts. And about 2 minutes later, I held off him in the exact same position he'd waited on his step and he goose stepped me and scored under the posts. So he was unplayable for a couple of years for a short spell, but he obviously went off to 15s. And I still think Tomasi Thama's the best player that's ever played the game, because he was a complete player. He was an unbelievable playmaker. He was an unbelievable goal kicker, restarter, and he could defend. You know, Serevi was ridiculous on attack, but man, he was windy on defence. Whereas Tomasi's toughness, you know, both sides of the ball, his ability to read a game, 2011, 2012, 2013, you know, he was almost unplayable, really. He just pulled the strings in a team that, you know, was his team. He was the best player in the world for a number of years. So I genuinely think Tomasi, you know, I work with him now and so lucky to have him involved with the team. Just as a man, he's a great thinker. He's a deep thinker. He's a great guy to have in your environment, but he's obviously got massive, you know, knowledge of the game, and his appetite to always want to be better and create a game that can be better and really play a complete game is, you know, is one of the reasons, you know, we're moving forward. He's a big part of that.
Do you think the New Zealand rugby public underestimates or undervalues the skills that are required to play the game of sevens, and you use Thama as an example?
I certainly think, well, I'll put it this way, how many of the our sevens players can play 15s? Which the short answer is they can all play 15s. Now, at varying levels, I get that. How many 15s players could play sevens? It's not as many, is it? You know, so it's a harder game from a pure skill set and conditioning, mindset. I think I've been involved in Super Rugby. I've coached internationals with Samoa. You know, I've worked in English Premiership. I genuinely believe it's harder, but it's just different. It's not good and bad. It's just different. And some players are more suited, same as referees are more suited to refereeing sevens. Some players are just, you know, better suited to playing 15s or sevens. But I certainly think our players, you know, potentially undervalued within New Zealand. The profile, you know, the women's team obviously got a massive profile in the women's game. I look at the Blitzbokke in South Africa. You go there, and their players are hugely well known and respected within their country around what they've done. You know, and say like a Tim Mickelson. Timmy's been, you know, Timmy, if you watch when Timmy first played sevens, what the game looked like to what it looks like now, and to still be one of the world leading players, you know, he's up there with like say Richie McCaw for me around the sevens. He's not, you know, Richie McCaw is probably the best player that's ever played the game, but he's really similar. He's played a game where there was no defence, no structure, no set piece, to that all being unreal, and he's still one of the best players in the world. So I'd love our players to have a profile and you know, and people understand how good they are at what they do, because they put so much in every day. You see what they do. I've never worked with a group that works harder. I can genuinely say that. I've worked with individuals that work really hard. You look at TJ Perinara, Dane Coles, guys like that. The Hurricanes are huge work ethic every day, but as a full group, the sevens crew are up there.
But just with saying the skill set and how you've answered that, mate, I just think it follows on really, really well to this moment from day one, Cape Town 2018. You lost the game earlier in the day, and I believe you had to beat South Africa in South Africa in the last game of the day to go through to the quarterfinals, bearing in mind that you'd never not been in the quarterfinals. And at this stage in the game, there's 30 seconds left in the game. South Africa has just scored to make it 21-14. And I'll just play this clip. We're talking about skill set.
Beautiful floating pass, and the ball has beaten the man. The captain, Stuart Moria, is going in for the try. We're about to find out the answer to your question, Carlton. They've got to take the conversion within the next 5 seconds or so. One, yep, it is kicked. We will have another play. 21-all.
Yeah, all good.
And it comes down to the kickoff you're talking about, a lot better from the home team. Shona Malia gets his double. That's beautiful from Pulamoni. This is out number one. The kickoff's taken. fella coming back. There was a sub being made in the form of the captain. Kick off. Where does New Zealand go to?
Okay.
Amanaki Nicole, the near side. Collier on the left-hand side of Newstom's going to kick this ball off.
Time back on.
Hanging in contested, lost forward though. Pride of Blitzfox. Justin Capill going for the intercept of New Zealand. Can they steal it at the deck here? Capill, a brilliant tackle from Zane Davids.
Signing.
Amanaki Nicole, advantage to New Zealand. Here they come for the corner. What a finish!
Time off.
What a finish!
Mate, I just love that clip because you talk about inspiring people, and I was at the game, obviously was not involved in the game, but quickly shouted up, ran out to watch you guys, knew what a big game it was. But Richard's already talked about it, 55 screaming South Africans. It's an intimidating atmosphere as Cape Town Stadium. And the skill set that you just talked about under pressure to operate that skip ball, to score the try, and then with 14 seconds before the kick needs to be taken, to slot it, to make it 21-all, and then to execute the kickoff again, which is a massive skill in sevens, to retain possession and then to score in the corner. I put it in before I knew you were going to talk so highly about the skill level of the team. But I mean, where does that moment sort of sit with you over your 3 or 4 year journey with the team?
Yeah, it's as an out and out moment. It's right up there. You said we'd lost the game. We actually lost to Samoa last play of the game. It was the first time we'd lost them in 2 years in the second group game. And they scored after the hooter. And that's what I'm talking around fine lines and building a team that respects that and understands some days you'll win some and some days you'll lose. So we train a lot at the minute around trying to focus and create chaos in our trainings and scenarios. We've got a little, I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember what a pressure cooker was. Not and Bryce and you fellas, Paul, will remember what a pressure cooker was, but your mum used to make soup in it. But we've put scenarios in, especially this year, not so much before that actual. And that's one of the ones the boys had to write down when they felt like they're most vulnerable or under most pressure. And a lot of the players put down that moment because we were under huge pressure of going out of the tournament, having won the weekend before. But I guess that's why you train, that's why you play. Billy, as I say, is a naturally gifted athlete. It's actually not a great pass for him, that one, left to right. That skip ball that we throw, he gets it wrong more than he gets right in training. So it stuck that day, and we were good enough to get the ball back off a kickoff and showed some real composure to win. So the composure part is massive for us. And playing South Africa, if you look at the final this year, we won 7-5. The year before, we beat Africa in the semi-final by a score. And we went down to 6 men, and we kept playing. We took Andrew Newsome took a quick drop kick and played at 6 men, and we scored just before half time. So building those composure trainings or pressure cooker moments in your training, I think is really important. I think referees need to. If you see some of the referees on the circuit that are not good at getting decisions, what we or what I think are on the money. I think a lot of it comes down to that, is not being able to, you've touched on it, Richard, around getting really clear on what you're looking for, getting really clear on what the game looks like, so you can then understand the cues, so you can make good decisions on the run. So our players are no different. So we've been trying to train those scenarios right from the start, back in 17, 18, because we know, or whenever the Olympics do happen, it's going to come down to 1 or 2 plays. So we need to train that. We need to be, ready to execute under that massive pressure. So skill set under pressure is one of our key focuses for this season. And how we do that in training, how we question, how we put players under pressure is something we've been really trying to build and grow over the last couple of seasons.
RK, we spoke when we were preparing for this night. We spoke about composure and operating under pressure. and me talking about that big game blue scenario was, you know, a little bit tongue in cheek around you getting yourself amped up for it. But you said a comment to me around, you know, like those big occasions, you just have to actually go in at the calmest possible level. So, you know, how do you get yourself into the right mental state so that you can, when the pressure's on, like we saw in that game, not that it was you refereeing it, but you've been involved in those moments, so that when the pressure comes on, that you're ready and clear enough to make those decisions. How do you go about preparing for that, mate?
Yeah, well, once you know you've done the work, like the players do all the trainings, they do all the techniques. It's just about trusting your plan and going out and executing. But in and around all that, it's important that you're not like overhyped going into those big situations. That you actually, I find it better to go in there actually quite calm. And it's quite interesting some of the times, because of our latest watches and stuff, we can see our heart rate. So sometimes I run onto the field with, you know, a heart rate under 100, just to try and stay actually quite cool and calm. And then vice versa, if I run out there and I know my heart rate's up around like that 140 and stuff like that, just from running out onto the field, I'm just self-aware of myself going into these situations. So I'm not going to go out there and then overreact or pull a rabbit out of the hat, and sort of just let the information come to me in these big moments, because the players will decide, rightly or wrongly, the outcome of a game, and that's ultimately what you want as a referee.
And I think, James, it's interesting listening to Richard, because you can take it to a deeper level around, because what I'm hearing from Richard is he's comfortable in himself, he's more travelled, he's you know, he's got a baby now, he's got his house, he's got his wife, so his own identity as a man isn't wrapped up in, does he make a good decision when there's the last play of the game? You know, now it'll be disappointing if he makes a wrong decision, but I don't know, Richard, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but that's what I'm hearing from him. And it's no different in a rugby team around that decision making. If you're really clear and calm and your identity's strong as men, and you're not wrapped up in it's, you know, it's not the end of the world if you make a bad decision, is it? You know, it's I think we've all been shown that in the last 6 weeks. You know, that's my hope for the world at the minute, is that we're all listening to what it's telling us, that we're not that important. You know, and maybe I'll not jump out of my seat as much when referees make a decision, but I doubt it. But you know, it's.
I didn't include your old jump out of the seat in Gold Coast.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Sat back down pretty quickly when you realised the size of the man, didn't you?
Yeah, well, Muffin Thingy's a little bit too big for me to take on, but I was keen for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
But you know, I think it's, if there's young referees listening, or young coaches or young players, I think it's so important that you get really clear on yourself. Because if you can be, you know, I'm getting a wee bit deep, but if you're really comfortable in yourself and you're your best self, you can make other people better so they can be their best self. Then all of a sudden, you know, you're working with a crew that's all at their best and being their best. I'm not convinced we spend enough time on that. Even as a relationship, you know, I spoke to Richard yesterday, relationships with coaches and referees. How do we get that better so we're all comfortable with each other? That, you know, if we make a bad decision, a player, coach, or referee, we can sort of move on a bit quicker and not get too hung up on it. Yeah, we get a wee bit deep, I suppose, but that's what 6 weeks in lockdown does to you.
No, it's really, really good advice, and that's sort of, you know, it's great to have you on to be able to do that with the referee audience that's tuned in tonight. So I think, guys, there's a lot more that we can cover and a lot more, but I'm conscious that it's getting a little bit late. So I suppose just to wrap a few things up. You know, obviously we've already touched on the fact that the Olympics are pushed out a year. So, you know, what's next really, Clark, in terms of the team and RK in terms of refereeing? I know we've spoken to Paddy around things, and we're all back on the circuit next year. So what's next, boys?
Well, we're no different to any industry at the minute. For us, you know, survival mode is the order of the day. New Zealand Rugby, and, you know, all companies around the world, we're certainly in survival mode. So hopefully we can come through the next period, you know, with a team and a program. I'd be surprised if there's any World Series tournaments between now and, you know, Dubai. There's obviously meant to be 4. You know, I've got no indication from World Rugby if that'll go ahead or not. But if you look around the world, it's going to be pretty hard to travel 16 teams from from around the world congregate in a hotel and then fly back to your countries. So really for us, mate, it's trying to get through these levels as best we can and make sure players and their families are all good. We've got some plans to connect as a group as we come through that. I think New Zealand looks like it's going to get the virus under control, so hopefully we can get some rugby within the country for you fellas. I'll get the referee. We might get some players playing some rugby, and then really it'll be about starting again as a pre-season and build back up to the Olympics. You know, we think now we've got a pretty good blueprint for how we went about stuff this year, but we also know that, you know, if you just do the same, then you go backwards. So we've already had some really good conversations as management and coaches reviewing our program and reviewing our players and reviewing the game. But we'll just, you know, we've got a bit of patience now until we can get back together as a coaching group or a management, and probably even longer as a playing group. So really for us, it's just try to do that, mate. Get really clear on some areas we think we can improve, do some PD, and get involved in the community. You know, something we're big on as a team. We genuinely want to get out there and do some projects within the community to hopefully help, you know, either club rugby or school sport to really unite the country again and inspire it. It's been a tough few weeks. Obviously, we've not been hit here as bad as some countries. So, you know, I don't know much about politics, but I think our government's done an amazing job.
And I agree. And Richard, what's your thoughts around refereeing and the near future?
I suppose in the 7 scene, I'm not worried about it too much. Just trying to get on with life, really. I suppose like we all are. And the landscape's changing so much all the time, so I'm not trying to get into all the little detail in and around all that sort of stuff. I hope club rugby starts back up for all of us, so we can get some rugby, and then obviously build off that into maybe some sort of wider team cup, or if the professional arm gets up and running around the Super Rugby teams, then I look forward to watching some footy on TV like everyone else. But that's pretty much where I'm at the moment, is just in a bit of a holding pattern. Still training, love the training, just starting to get actually back into watching games and getting back into clips after I'd sort of gave myself a little 3-week break there, just to recoup and recover. And life's probably more important than rugby, so but we're starting to come through and onto the other side of that a little bit now. So yeah.
No, awesome. Look, guys, we'll wrap things up there just with the timing of everything. I had a lot more, but you've got so much knowledge around the game of sevens. So thanks, Clark, for your time, and wish all the best with your team and your team's partners and their families in the difficult time. And Richard, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your insight of 280 World Series games, mate. Angus, thanks for coming in and controlling those questions. And to you all, thanks for being here. Appreciate you coming on the call. Next week, we've got a massive one for you. Brendan Pickrell is interviewing Alan Roland, around his career as a player, as a referee, and obviously is now the World Rugby referee manager. So they're on from 8:30 next Thursday. So that'll go out through the REO channels, and hopefully see you all back here next week. Thanks again, guys, for tonight, and be safe.
Cheers, fellas. Thank you.
Cheers.